Hey everybody, it's Adam back again from the Army Painter with yet another video tutorial. In today's video, we're going to further explore some of the characters that we've developed for a brand new product line that we're calling Gamemaster. Every party has that one Dwarf Cleric, right? Hjalgrum Iron Oath is a little bit different. He's stoic, proud, and fiercely loyal. Hjalgrum is always at the forefront of the fighting, and his protective spells have saved the party more often than just about anything else. It's been a really long time since I've painted a dwarf model, so I'm really excited to throw some paint on this Hjalgrum model. So today we're going to teach some of the basic principles of base coating and washing in what we're calling an adventure-ready tutorial. So let's take a look at some of the paints that we're going to be using. Now that you've got your paints, go ahead and grab some clean rinsing water. I like to use my wet palette, and if you haven't gotten one yet, you should really give it a try. And go ahead and find your favorite brush, and let's get right to it. So you can see I primed the model in Army Painter Green Skin Color Primer from our Color Primer spray range. And while the most of the model is going to be in metallic tones, I figured it'd be a good place to start by priming it with the green because the inside of the shield is green and some other areas on the model I would like to remain green to match the artwork from John Gallagher. To start, I took a little bit of Lawful White and I'm just going to apply this to the recesses of the eyes. And you know what? If you get this on the skin tone areas, the areas that you want to paint in skin tones, whatever colors they may be, purple, if you want to use a pinkish rosy hue, which I think we're going to do because he is a Dwarf Cleric, or if you wanted to use a darker skin tone, you could. But I'm just going to apply this white into the recesses of the eyes to start, and that's all we're going to do for the eyes. We're just going to apply that little bit of white. If you'd like to, you could go back and add a little dot of black to add in a pupil if you wanted to, but I find this to be a very simple way to achieve fairly realistic and fairly simple results for eyes. You know what, I changed my mind. I did go in and just add a small dot of abyssal black into the pupils of the eyes. Now, I have some ruddy skin and I'm going to just start basing in the flesh tone, starting with the nose here. And I'm actually going to use this color to base tone the beard. We are going to go for a bright fire orange beard. So this is going to act as a nice base coat for that orange paint to sit on top of. So very carefully, just take a little bit of that ruddy skin and without getting it into the pupils of the eyes, you're just going to go ahead and apply that to the face of our cleric dwarf here. It's okay if you get this on other areas. Oops, I got it on the shoulder pad. Don't be too concerned with that because we are going to base that in the later stages with a different color. And one of the beauties of the Army Painter Color Primer system is that they are a 100% color match to our war paints and to any of the D&D Nolzur's Marvelous Pigments that share a matching war paint. In this case, Feywild Emerald is a matching tone to our green skin war paint and a 100% match to our green skin color primer. So if you were to get paint over top of any of the areas that you wanted to remain green later on in your project, you can just go back and tidy them up a little bit with that Feywild Emerald. Now that we've base coated all of the skin tones, we're going to move on to painting the beard. And like I said, I wanted him to have a very bright fire orange. I want him to have a bright fire orange beard, so I'm just taking a little bit of Rust Monster and I'm going to apply this as a base tone all over the beard, the braids of his beard, and his mustache. Now, by applying the skin tone first, this allows us to have even better coverage of this Rust Monster. Orange pigments as well as yellow and red pigments tend to be slightly weaker pigments. They take more coats and more time. I like to apply them in 1 or 2 thin coats. Now I'm going to apply 2 thin coats of this over top of the skin tone, but the skin tone definitely helped. If we were trying to do this straight over top of, say, a black or even this green skin color primer, it would take several more layers. So this just helped to speed up the process a little bit, and it's always great to save a bit of time because the faster you're done painting your minis, the more time you get to play with them. Our Dwarf Cleric has some very bright shining silver, but it's almost like a white gold in the illustrations that John Gallagher did. So in order to achieve this effect, I'm going to begin by base coating all of the armor on the model in this gold. I'm going to start right here on the shoulder pad, and this will require probably 2 thin coats In most areas, one will do just fine, but I'm using a bit of Kieran Gold. I'm just going to apply this in a smooth base coat, just slightly watered down, so we get nice even coverage and we won't obscure any of the detail. So just go about the model finding all the areas that you want to be metallic in the end, like here on the shield that he wears on his back. I'm just going to very carefully trim this in. I'm going to leave the green on the inside, and if we do happen to get any of this metallic gold paint on it, that's okay. We can clean it back up with our Feywild Emerald in later steps. Now we've got a nice solid coat of our Curing Gold across all of the armor on the model. I give it 2 thin coats of the gold. I am going to be taking our new Masterclass dry brush. Any dry brush will do here, but I really like the Masterclass dry brush because of its rounded brush head. And I'm just going to take this Silver Dragon paint from the D&D paint sets, and I'm going to highlight up and work up that gold to a bright, almost white gold. So just very carefully, I'm just working on the uppermost edges. I'm going to leave some of that gold. I want to leave a little bit of it in the recesses. Don't worry too much. You see I got it here on the cape. That's okay because we are going to come back and clean that up a little bit later in this tutorial. So just go across the model. Careful not to get it on the skin or the beard. If you do, you can always, again, you just clean it right back up with your original paint. If you're using our wet palette, it should still be nice, wet, and pliable on the palette. Careful on the shield here. You see I am getting some of the silver paint on the green parts, but that's okay. We're just going to come back and clean it up later on. Go ahead and find all of the armor bits on the model and apply this dry brush technique to it. We'll move on to the next step. Now we're going to go paint in all of the remaining metallic areas on the model. This time we're using Mithril Silver. This is a slightly darker tone of silver paint. It's actually a match to our plate mail metal from the Army Painter War Paints range. So just the other areas that aren't necessarily that bright gold metallic paint, like the head of his mace here. He's got a couple buckles, and we're just going to pick those out now across his armor, across the model. So just pick out all of the metallic areas that are not going to be the gold metallic with this Mithril Silver. Next, we're moving on to Skeleton Bone, and our Dwarf Cleric has a bit of parchment bound up, attached to his hip. Now we painted in the metal straps around the parchment, and we're just going to color in the little bits of paper here very carefully. I'm using a character brush from the Wargamer range. Just go ahead and paint in that piece of parchment. Here at the Army Painter, we are usually busy developing paints and hobby accessories, so it's not often that we get to jump in and develop characters. So this whole Game Master process and developing these characters to help tell the Game Master story has been a really fun experience. We got to work with a very talented, world-renowned illustrator and graphic designer by the name of John Gallagher, and he helped us out with some of the artwork for these characters and the Game Master box, which you'll be seeing not too far from now. So let's take a listen to what John had to say about our favorite Dwarf Cleric.
So Hjalgrum, the Dwarf Cleric, what can you say about Dwarf Clerics, or rather Dwarves in general, that probably hasn't been already committed to popular lore? So as a Dwarf Cleric, clearly what you have to do is you have to have manifesting magic to reflect the cleric class. And Dwarf, he's got to have a beard, because even the female dwarves have beards, which are, of course, the source, like in real history of the Ottoman Empire. Facial hair was a monument to everything from virility to status, and became an ornamentation for the character. So when you're doing a dwarf, I mean, in essence, their beard is half of the character. So you always want to make sure that that's front and center, no questions, and no ambiguity. That is clearly a dwarf, and by stature and muscular density in terms of their height and body size.
So just follow around and repaint over all the areas that you want to be painted green. Cover up any of the mistakes that you had when you were dry brushing your Mithril Silver, your Silver Dragon over top of the golden armor on the model. Just take your time here, especially back here on the shield, because you don't want to paint over any of the areas that you've painted in your metallics. So just very carefully with thin down paints, go ahead and reestablish all of the green tones on your model. Now that we've reestablished all of the green tones on the model, we're going to go about and pick out the areas that we want to be brown. So our cleric has a little belt here, and as you can see in John Gallagher's artwork, he has that painted in brown. So I'm using some rigid leather here from the D&D Underdark paint set. Just very carefully base that in. And I'm going to apply this as well to the pouch that he has here hanging off of his belt. Careful not to get any of our rigid leather on top of the metallic areas that we painted. And I'm going to also base in his gloves in this rigid leather. So we've almost finished applying all of the base coats all around the miniature. So now we are going to base in the base. So all of these cobblestones that you got here, these cobble pavers, we're just going to apply a little bit of orc skin, 1 or 2 thin coats to act as our base tone. Just very simple. Careful not to get any of this orc skin, this very light gray, on top of your metallics. It's going to be a little bit of a pain to go ahead and fix that because we've applied 2 layers to the armor already, and to replicate that might be a little bit difficult. So just take your time here with thin down paints. Just apply this orc skin with superior control. There you go. Just take your time. It'll save you more time in the long run than if you were to mess up and paint a little bit outside the lines in any of these areas. Once the orc skin has had some time to dry, I'm just going to take a little bit of skeleton bone and I'm going to apply this to just some random pavers on this cobblestone base, just to add a bit of variation, a more natural appearance. You can also take a little bit of any of the browns that you have on your palette, mix it in, like we already have some rigid leather on there. Mix in some of the rigid leather with your skeleton bone so you could add a darker brown paver, like so. Now that we've applied all of our base coats, we're going to move right on to the wash stage. And adding a wash is going to add some nice definition and contrast to the model because the pigments inside the wash are designed to run into the recesses of the model while leaving your base tone just about as close as you can to the original tone. It will tint it down a little bit, as you can see here. And right now I'm applying flesh wash. This is a light brown wash. And I'm going to apply this across all of the gold and silver armor as well as the skin tones on the model. Now, if you do begin to see the wash pull up too much in certain areas, because it is designed to run into the recesses, just go ahead and take your brush and wick it away. Just go ahead and apply this to all of the metallic areas on the model as well as the skin tones. Careful not to get it onto any of the green areas on the model. And there we are with the flesh tone wash fully dried on all of the metallic bits, of course the face and the beard. Now we're going to apply a shadow wash, and this is a dark black wash, and we're going to apply this all over the green tones, all of our leathers, and of course the back of the shield. Now very simply, we're just going to apply 1 coat of this all over all of the brown areas on the model like so, making sure that we don't leave any bits untouched that we want to be washed in this tone, and careful not to get this on any of the gold armor. We really don't want to have this color wash on that armor. So just take your time here, be very careful. On the back of the model, like here, we're just almost going to apply, it's kind of like a pin wash, but not really. We just want to apply this into the recesses, allow the model and the shapes of the model, because we do have some nice recesses here, nice hard edges to guide this wash. And it's almost going to be applied like a glaze. You can see that it is working its way into the recesses, and we're slightly darkening down the green color inside this shield. And that's what we want to have happen to all of the green areas on the model. So take your time, apply this again to all of the brown areas, the leather areas on the model, as well as the dark metallics, the gray metallics like our mithril silver, and of course the green cape on the model like so. I hope you enjoyed this Adventure Ready tutorial as much as I enjoyed painting up this model for you today. Remember that you could find all of the paints and products that we used today from your friendly local game store, from your favorite online providers such as Amazon, or at www.thearmypainter.com. Now remember that the magic in miniature painting is that it can be as simple or as challenging as you'd like it to be, but with the right techniques, you're sure to achieve some great results. We'll see you next time.